Either that, or maybe in the past 1 year I may have received some of these emails that this organization sends on supporting Turkish, vote against Turkish genocide, because I get those from Student Association. The name may have been there.
Do you know anything other than what you've just described here about known as TCA?
TCA, yes, I don't know anything.
You don't know who the officers are?
You work with them.
I think I'm Turkish American Legal Defense Fund.
Okay, then, all right.
But you would know that I work with them just because I told you. You didn't know it independently from me informing you. Is that correct, or did you know that independently?
Your name just came up in associated with that organization. Maybe it was in the article I read in Politico, but no.
Okay. I think you testified in the direct examination about state secrets and how that had been, the state secrets privilege had been employed in some of the litigation that you had initiated to obtain dismissal, I think, of your case, and then blocking Motley Rice having access to a deposition. Now, state secrets privilege is a legal doctrine. Have you read Supreme Court cases that identify what the elements of a state secret is?
I have read so much on state secrets privilege and so many court documents. Are you talking about any recent Supreme Court?
Well, how about Doe versus Webster?
No, I haven't.
You haven't read that? Have you read Reynolds versus the United
Yes.
States? Totten versus the United States?
Yes. Again, I read all those during my court case, and my court case was active, so it would be 3-4 years ago, mainly, those cases.
Mm-hmm. Have you testified on the pending legislation on state secrets? I think Jerry Nadler is the chief sponsor. Have you testified for any of the congressional committees considering state secrets legislation?
No. I have to qualify that. The congressional members have a kind of a gag order on them because of the retroactive classification and order they got from Justice Department during, I believe, Attorney General Ashcroft. So they don't even know if they can have me there.
Well, I've testified at the hearings, and they don't get into anything like that. It's just what the law ought to be, but that's aside from it. Just move on. Have you put in a fair amount of... Did you study lobbyists and lobby groups and how they operate in Washington?
I have been reading.
Read about how lobby groups operate in Washington?
Depends on what I have read.
Give me the books that you've read. And I don't let them put a time frame. I don't want it to be endless. Say, since you left the FBI.
Since I left the FBI, it has been mainly articles published both by mainstream media and also alternative media on at least the cases that have come up, whether it is on APAC or the conflict of interest case, such as the recent case that had to do with the defense contractors being related to a particular congressman, Morta, and how that lobbying caused. So it will be mainly mainstream media related article of the consequences of the foreign lobbies and the conflict of interest between certain business sectors lobby and congressional relations.
Have you ever read the Foreign Agents Registration Act?
Several years ago, yes, and I read it, I believe, at the Department of Justice's website. This would be around maybe 2006 or 2007.
And what's your understanding of when you have to register as a foreign agent?
Again, it's been a while. It was my understanding that if you worked and you lobbied on behalf of that foreign government.
If you're a lawyer, do you have to, if you represent a foreign government as a lawyer, do you have to register?
I don't know.
What about the Lobbying Disclosure Act? Are you familiar with that statute?
Not as an expert, and someone very familiar with the technical language, but very broad kind of understanding when I was reading, again, with just the regular mainstream media and alternative media articles published on the topic.
do you have any personal knowledge of the campaign that was run by Mr. Krikorian in the 2007-2008 election cycle, in which he ran as an independent against Gene Schmidt in the 2nd District of Ohio? If I use the word a government-sponsored political action committee, what is your understanding of a foreign government-sponsored political action committee? What does that mean to you? In specifics, does that mean the foreign government is giving money to that political action committee or other things of value?
I'm not sure.
Does it have any meaning to you at all?
Government-sponsored political action committee? Guess, again, I don't know. I haven't read the description or definition of that particular terminology. But the meaning to me would be, it would be either by a commerce slash a business, sponsored, and doesn't mean necessarily money, or the lobbying and the advocacy for by a certain group.
Okay, if it's not money, what are the other things that come to mind to you?
I am not sure.
But money would be the most prominent thing that would come to mind, or not? Other things compete with money as to what it means?
I guess that depends on which country, foreign country you're dealing with.
Dealing
what
with
is
Turkey,
the
if it's Turkey, if it's a Turkish government sponsor.
If it's a Turkish-sponsored PAC, and up until, let's say, year 2002, January, it meant certain things. I don't know what it has meant since then, but up until 2002, it would have meant something.
And what was that?
When their donations are made to a certain PAC or a lobbying, well, during that time period, it was only done to PACs or PACs that are related to congressional candidates who had made covertly promises and deals, because they have overt promises. Yeah, I will be promoting commerce, etc., but covertly to further certain interests or agendas of certain business and entities. And sometimes, or most of the times, those were hand in hand with the certain government agents, the foreign government agents here.
So that was giving money prior to 2002. Turkish-sponsored PACs would be giving money to the PACs to give the money to the members of Congress?
No, you asked for the reason. You said, why would they give? And
No, I'm not. If I spoke that, it was inartful. I'm not asking why they gave. I'm just saying a Turkish government-sponsored PAC prior to 2002, I think that was the time frame you're referring to, meant, in your understanding, that the government of Turkey gave money to the PAC in order to give to members of Congress. I'm not asking what they thought in exchange.
Right, and they did so overtly and covertly. For example, sometimes the money in form of a suitcase of cash would go to a certain person or a business entity, and from that business person entity would be divided to 10 people in order to not trace the origin of that money to that particular Turkish government agent or a Turkish government group. So they did it in a step, so it just depends.
So it would be like they would use a middleman. All right, the origin of the money is the government of Turkey. They give it to, looks like a private business or entity, and they tell them, you then turn around and maybe give it to another middleman. So there's some kind of chain of custody that separates the government of Turkey directly from the end user, but the origin of the money is in Turkey.
Or a government entity associated with
a government-owned corporation or enterprise, I think.
Or it can be an entity, let's say it can be a military attaché person that is doing that, the Turkish military attaché, and that person is, that military attaché person is employed by the Turkish government, and suddenly says, okay, I have a suitcase of $45,000, and how are we going to distribute that? And let's say they have a candidate in mind, there are ways they did it, and that would be one way would be they get some of that cash, they get the citizens